I got home earlier than I usually did that evening. The air outside was dense with humidity, heavy and oppressive, a sure sign that a storm was brewing. Inside, the house felt strangely quiet. The usual noises of Nora moving about downstairs were missing, and the absence of her presence was immediately noticeable. My thoughts were still clouded by the chaos of the day. Pressing deadlines, back-to-back meetings, and the relentless grind that seemed never-ending. All I wanted was to step through the door, crack open a cold beer, and drop onto the couch. Maybe I could steal a moment of calm before Nora inevitably began recounting the small, inconsequential things that had filled her day. But the moment I stepped inside, I could tell something was wrong. It wasn't anything obvious at first, just an indescribable shift in the atmosphere. The air felt heavy, oppressive, even. I stood there in the entryway, feeling the weight of the silence pressing down on me as I tried to figure out what had changed. There was no soft hum of the TV, no clatter of dishes, no light footsteps heading toward me. Only silence. Thick, stifling, unnatural silence. I began climbing the stairs, though I wasn't entirely sure why. Maybe it was some kind of instinct, some unshakable sense of intuition. Either way, a knot was forming in my stomach, urging me forward. My steps were slow and deliberate, my movements quiet, as though I was afraid to disturb the silence. And then I heard it, a muffled sound that stopped me in my tracks. It was faint, but there was no mistaking it. A groan, soft and low. I froze. My mind raced to deny what I just heard, desperately trying to dismiss it as something innocent. But deep down, I already knew better. My heart started pounding, the kind of erratic, deafening thud that made it hard to breathe. Still, I didn't move. I couldn't bring myself to, not yet. Another groan, louder this time, followed by the unmistakable sound of movement. It was coming from upstairs, from our bedroom. I crept forward, my feet sinking into the carpet, muffling my steps as I edged closer. The bedroom door was slightly open, just enough for me to see the mirror on the opposite wall. And that's when I saw them. They were on the bed I had shared with Nora for years. She was underneath him, her face flushed, completely consumed by the moment, oblivious to the world around her. And him, Owen, my best friend, the man who had stood beside me on my wedding day, the one who had raised a glass and toasted to my happiness. He was there on top of her, his body pressed into hers, his hands gripping her in ways that made me physically ill. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow, leaving me breathless and stunned. Couldn't think, couldn't speak. I just stood there, frozen, watching my world crumble before my eyes. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to throw the door open, to drag him off her and demand an explanation. To rage, to shout, to make them both pay for what they had done. But I didn't move. Couldn't. My fists clenched tightly at my sides, my knuckles white with the effort of holding myself back. The urge to storm into the room and lash out was overwhelming. I wanted to smash Owen's face in, to demand that Nora explain how she could throw away everything we'd built together for something so cheap and fleeting. But I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me unravel. Not like this. Instead, I slowly backed away. Each step down the stairs felt heavier than the last, as though the weight of what I'd seen was physically dragging me down. My mind was a chaotic storm of anger, betrayal, and something else, something colder, a sense of purpose. I wasn't going to confront them now, not in the heat of the moment. There was a far more satisfying plan beginning to form in my mind. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, I slipped out the front door, careful not to make a sound as I closed it behind me. Outside, the sky had darkened, and the first drops of rain were beginning to fall, but I barely noticed. I wandered to my car, my body moving on autopilot. Every breath I took was laced with fury. Sitting in the driver's seat, I gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my hands ached. The image of them together burned into my mind. Her face, flushed and radiant, lost in pleasure. His body hovering over hers, as though he had every right to be there. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a complete obliteration of trust, a destruction so thorough that it left a void where love had once existed. But I wasn't going to explode in a blind fit of rage. No, I would give them time to think they had gotten away with it. Time to believe I was completely unaware. Nora would go on playing the role of the devoted wife, preparing my meals, kissing me goodnight, all while sneaking off to meet him. And Owen, he would act like nothing had happened, like he hadn't crossed the line with the one person he had no right to touch. They thought they were clever. They thought I was blind. But they had no idea what was coming. The plan came to me slowly, but with a clarity that surprised even me. I wasn't just going to expose them, I was going to dismantle their lives, piece by piece. I would take everything they cared about and destroy it. And the best part? They wouldn't see it coming. By the time they realized what I had done, it would already be too late. And Owen? He would pay the most. He thought he could ruin my life and walk away unscathed. But I knew where to hit him. His wife, Ivy, was his pride and joy, his perfect little trophy. He paraded her and their picture-perfect family life like a badge of honor. If he was so intent on destroying my family, then I would dismantle his in return. I would take Ivy from him, not just away from him, but in the most intimate way possible. I would make her mine, just as he had done with Nora. But unlike him, I wouldn't rush it. This wouldn't be some petty affair. This would be about power, about control, about revenge. I started the car, the engine roaring to life as the rain intensified, pounding against the windshield. My grip on the wheel loosened slightly, and a cold smile spread across my face. This wasn't the end of my marriage. It was just the beginning of their downfall, and I was going to enjoy every second of it. That night, I drove aimlessly through the rain-soaked streets, the rhythmic patter of raindrops against the windshield drowning out the storm raging inside me. The anger still simmered, but it had taken on a sharper, more focused edge. The shock of seeing them together had faded, replaced by a calm, calculated determination. Revenge couldn't be rushed. It wasn't something to unleash in a fit of rage, leaving me looking like the fool they clearly believed me to be. No, I wanted to destroy them both. Slowly, deliberately, so that when the pieces finally fell into place, they would be left standing in the ruins of their own lives. To start, I had to focus on Owen. I parked in a dark lot, the rain drumming on the roof of the car as I thought. Owen was always so smug, so certain he could take what was mine without consequence. He thought I was a fool, but what he didn't know was how well I understood him, his life, his weaknesses, and, most importantly, his wife. Ivy was the key. Owen and Ivy had built a picturesque life together. A cozy home, kids, the suburban dream. He flaunted it at every opportunity. What better way to destroy him than to take the thing he cherished most? But I wouldn't settle for a cheap thrill. This wasn't about seducing her. It was about control. Afterward? No, it couldn't just be about a fleeting affair. It needed to be deeper, more personal, more devastating. I didn't just want to sleep with Ivy. I wanted to take her away from Owen in the most profound and gut-wrenching way possible. I would make her fall for me, truly fall, until she began questioning everything she thought she knew about her husband. By the end of it, she would choose me not out of momentary lust, but out of what she believed was genuine love. And when that moment came, I would ensure Owen was there to watch his entire world crumble, piece by piece. What made the plan so tantalizing was how attainable it was. I already understood Ivy, her fears, her insecurities, her unspoken desires. She wasn't like Nora, not at all. Ivy was quieter, more introspective, with a fragile quality that Owen had never bothered to appreciate. To him, she was nothing more than a trophy to parade in front of family and friends, a symbol of his supposed success. But I knew better. I had noticed the cracks in their relationship long before now. I had seen her vulnerability, and I was ready to use it to my advantage. I glanced at my phone, debating whether tonight was the night to make my first move. But no, this wasn't something to be rushed. Patience would be my greatest ally. A plan like this needed to be executed with precision. For now, I would maintain my role as the oblivious husband, biding my time. Nora had no idea I was onto her, and that ignorance was my greatest weapon. When I arrived home, the faint sound of Nora humming drifted down from upstairs as she got ready for bed. Her voice, once soothing, now grated on me, each note laced with betrayal. I kept my face impassive as I moved through the house, grabbing a drink in the kitchen. She appeared moments later wearing one of my old, worn-out t-shirts, the kind she used to say she loved for its comfort. What once felt endearing now felt like mockery. "You're home late," she remarked casually, filling a glass with water. Her nonchalant tone sent a cold chill down my spine. She acted as if nothing had happened, as if just hours earlier she hadn't been in our bed with Owen. The audacity was galling. "Yeah," I replied evenly, masking every ounce of the fury boiling beneath the surface. "Work ran late." She walked over and kissed my cheek, her actions so normal it was nauseating. "I missed you today," she said, the words feeling hollow. I forced a smile, my expression cool and detached. "I missed you too," I lied effortlessly, the words leaving my lips as if they meant nothing. As she turned and headed back upstairs, I watched her go, my mind racing. How long did she think she could keep this charade going? How long before she realized her perfect little secret was already falling apart? Not yet, though. I wasn't ready to confront her. Not until everything was perfectly in place. Nora and Owen believed they were untouchable, secure in their deception. Little did they know, the ground beneath them was already beginning to crumble. The next day, I began setting my plan in motion. I reached out to Ivy, keeping it casual and unassuming. After all, we had known each other for years. Small talk between friends wouldn't seem out of place. I sent her a message, asking how she was doing and if she wanted to catch up sometime. Her reply came almost immediately, her eagerness palpable. No doubt, she welcomed the distraction from her increasingly strained marriage to Owen. Within a few days, we had plans to meet for coffee. On the surface, it seemed innocent. Owen and I had been friends for years, and the four of us often spent time together. But this time was different. This meeting was carefully calculated. We met at a quiet cafe downtown, the kind of place where no one paid much attention to who was sitting where. Ivy looked tired, as though the weight of the world was pressing down on her. She greeted me with a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Thanks for meeting me," I said, my tone light and friendly. "It's been a while since we last talked." "Yeah," she replied softly, her voice tinged with exhaustion. "Things have been busy." She didn't elaborate, and she didn't need to. I already knew. Owen, the perfect husband in appearance only, was failing her in all the ways that mattered. I encouraged her to open up, asking about her kids, her studio, her life, all while watching her closely. Every subtle shift in her expression, every flicker of doubt that crossed her face, I catalogued with precision. Then the conversation turned personal, and I knew I had her exactly where I wanted. "I've just been struggling lately," she admitted, her gaze dropping to the table. "It feels like Owen and I are growing further apart, like we're disconnected." I leaned in slightly, my tone soft and understanding. "That must be hard. You deserve better than that, Ivy." Her eyes lifted to meet mine, searching for something, validation, reassurance, maybe even hope. I gave her exactly what she needed. "You've always been such a good friend," she said, her voice carrying a hint of relief. "I don't know what I'd do without people like you." I offered her a warm smile, carefully masking the cold calculation beneath it. "You're not alone, Ivy. I'm always here if you need someone to talk to." She smiled back, but it was tinged with sadness. A smile belonging to someone beginning to realize her perfect life might not be so perfect after all. And that's what I wanted. To plant the seed of doubt, to make her question everything she thought she knew about her life with Owen. This was just the beginning. As I walked back to my car after our meeting, I felt a surge of triumph. Every step of the plan was falling into place. Owen had no idea that the very woman he had betrayed me with would soon become the catalyst for his own destruction. The rain began to fall as I drove home, the soft patter on the windshield matching the storm brewing inside me. This wasn't the end, it was only the beginning. The day after my meeting with Ivy, I felt a rush of satisfaction as I watched the first threads of my plan begin to unravel. Owen was completely oblivious, blind to the trap that was slowly tightening around him. Meanwhile, Ivy was starting to see me in a new light, not just as her husband's friend, but as someone who truly understood her. It was subtle for now, and that's exactly how I wanted it. Nora remained clueless, still texting me about the most mundane details of daily life. Grocery lists, weekend plans, and pointless chatter. She assumed I was blind to her betrayal, that I hadn't pieced it all together. But soon, she would see how wrong she was. About a week after my coffee with Ivy, I decided it was time to escalate. Owen was stuck working late on a big project, something he had mentioned in passing. It was the perfect opportunity. Tonight, my focus wasn't on Nora. It was on Ivy. As I pulled up to their house, the rain began falling harder, the streetlights casting a soft glow on the wet pavement. Through the living room window, I saw the flickering light of the TV. A cozy, inviting scene. It almost felt too easy. I knocked on the door, keeping my demeanor casual. A moment later, Ivy opened it, her surprise evident. "Oh, hi," she said, stepping aside to let me in. "I wasn't expecting you." I smiled, shaking the rain off my jacket. "Thought I'd drop by and check in. I was in the neighborhood." It was a lie, of course. I hadn't been anywhere near their neighborhood. But she didn't seem to mind. She even seemed happy to see me. "Owen isn't home," she said apologetically, glancing over her shoulder. "I know," I replied, my tone light. "I'm here for you." The words caught her off guard, just as I'd hoped. And as she hesitated for a moment, I knew I had taken another step toward breaking everything Owen held dear. A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face, but she masked it quickly, offering a small smile as she motioned for me to follow her into the living room. "Can I get you something to drink?" she asked, her tone light but carrying just a hint of nervousness. "Wine would be great," I replied, settling into the couch. She disappeared into the kitchen, and I could hear the soft clink of glasses and the quiet thud of the refrigerator door. When she returned, she handed me a glass of red wine and took a seat on the couch, closer than usual. "How are you holding up?" I asked, keeping my tone gentle and warm, the perfect image of concern. Ivy sighed, staring into her glass. "It's been rough," she admitted, her voice soft. "Owen has been so distant lately, and, I don't know, sometimes it feels like he doesn't care at all." I nodded slowly, my expression sympathetic. "You're not imagining that," I said carefully, my voice steady and understanding. "Owen has always struggled to truly appreciate what he has." She looked up at me, her eyes searching mine as if hoping to find reassurance. "You've always been so kind to us," she said, her voice quiet. "I honestly don't know what I'd do without people like you." I let her words linger in the space between us before I reached out, my hand resting gently on her knee. The touch was deliberate but soft, leaving her room to pull away if she chose. "You deserve so much more, Ivy," I said quietly, my voice low and sincere. "You deserve someone who really sees you, who values you for who you are." Her breath hitched slightly, but she didn't pull away. Her eyes flicked to my hand on her knee, and I could see the conflict in her expression. The tension between us grew heavier, the air charged as though the space itself had shrunk. I don't know what to do," she murmured, her voice trembling as she gripped her glass. "I do," I replied, leaning in just enough to close the distance slightly, careful not to push too far. "You know in your heart that you deserve more than this, Ivy. You deserve better than what Owen gives you." Her gaze dropped to where my hand rested, and I could see the battle within her. Loyalty to her husband clashing with the desire for something Owen had failed to provide. Slowly, she leaned toward me, her lips parting slightly, her breath shallow. It would have been easy to close the gap, to kiss her in that moment, but I held back. This wasn't about rushing. It was about control, about letting her want it. I leaned back slightly, breaking the tension but keeping the connection intact. Her eyes opened, a flicker of confusion crossing her face. "I should get going," I said lightly, my tone casual yet leaving enough of the moment lingering to stay with her. "Yeah, maybe that's for the best," she murmured, her voice unsteady. I stood, placing my glass deliberately on the coffee table. "We'll talk soon," I said with a small smile that hinted at unspoken promises. "And remember, Ivy, I'm here for you." As I walked out the door, I could feel her eyes following me, the weight of our conversation hanging in the air. She was teetering now, caught in that fragile space between loyalty and temptation. All she needed was one more push, and I would be there to catch her when she fell. When I reached my car, the rain had lightened, leaving the air cool and damp. I paused for a moment, savoring the sense of control. The first part of my plan was moving perfectly. Owen had taken Nora from me, but he had no idea I was setting him up to lose everything. Ivy, his family, his life. For now, patience was my greatest ally. I would let the tension simmer, let the betrayal build beneath the surface until it was ready to explode. The cracks in their lives were already widening, and all I needed to do was wait. The next few days passed in a quiet haze of routine. Nora continued her charade, sending me sweet texts and playing the role of a devoted wife, even as she sneaked away to meet Owen. Their recklessness was almost comical, as if they truly believed I was oblivious. Watching her glide through the house, so confident in her deception, nearly made me laugh. The cracks were forming, but she couldn't see them yet. To keep her unsuspecting, I turned on the charm. Surprise date nights, spontaneous compliments, acts of affection. If she noticed the sudden shift, she didn't comment. Maybe she thought I was simply trying harder in our marriage. More likely, she was too wrapped up in Owen to care. But Ivy, she was my focus now. Since our night in her living room, I had felt a shift. She began reaching out more frequently, sharing her worries, her frustrations, and little details about her day. Each message, each conversation, was another step in pulling her closer to me and further from Owen. The rift between them was growing, and he didn't even realize it. By the end of the week, I knew it was time to take things further. Owen had mentioned a work conference. He'd be out of town for a few days, leaving the perfect opening for me to escalate my plan. The timing couldn't have been better. On Friday night, I sent Ivy a message. "How are you holding up? Need some company?" Her reply came almost instantly. She was home alone and could use the distraction. That was all the invitation I needed. As I drove to her house, the rain had stopped, but the streets were still slick under the glow of the streetlights. The cool night air carried a sense of inevitability. Tonight would be the next step. When I arrived, Ivy opened the door, greeting me with a tired but genuine smile. "Thanks for coming," she said softly. "It's been a long week." The weariness in her voice was clear, the sadness etched into her features unmistakable. Owen's neglect had done its damage, and I was ready to step into the void. "I'll always be here for you," I said, my voice calm and steady as I stepped inside. We settled into the living room, the lights low, the air between us comfortable yet charged. She poured us wine and we began talking. Small things at first, the mundane details of her week. But as the evening wore on, the conversation turned deeper, more vulnerable. I could see the cracks widening, her defenses crumbling. I don't know how much longer I can pretend everything is okay," she confessed, her voice heavy with emotion. "Owen is never really here, and when he is, it's like he's not even present. I feel like I've already lost him." Her words lingered, thick with pain. This was the moment I had been waiting for. I reached out, gently placing my hand over hers, letting the warmth of my touch do the work. "You haven't lost him, Ivy," I said softly. "But maybe it's time to stop holding on to something that isn't there anymore. You deserve to be more than an afterthought." She looked up at me, her eyes wide and searching. "I don't know what to do," she whispered, her voice trembling with desperation. "I've tried everything to fix things. I just want it to work, but I feel so alone," she added, her voice cracking under the weight of her admission. "You're not alone," I replied firmly, my tone steady and reassuring. "You're not alone, Ivy. I'm here. I've always been here." And then, as if driven by something beyond her control, she leaned in. Her lips brushed softly against mine, tentative and questioning, as though testing a connection she hadn't dared to imagine. I kissed her back, allowing the moment to linger just long enough before pulling away, keeping my breath steady and my demeanor calm, as if this was how it was always meant to be. Her eyes widened, shock flickering across her face. I shouldn't have done that, she stammered, instinctively pulling back, her hand rising to cover her mouth. I'm so sorry. I shook my head slowly, my voice low and soothing. Don't apologize, Ivy. You've done nothing wrong. Confusion and guilt warred in her expression, her eyes searching mine for reassurance. But what about Owen? She asked, the uncertainty heavy in her voice. Owen isn't here, I said softly but firmly. And if he were, would he even notice what you're going through? Her silence was deafening. Told me everything I needed to know. She had crossed a line, and while guilt lingered, I could see in her eyes that she didn't regret it. Not truly. The relief of feeling something real again outweighed the weight of her betrayal. I just feel so lost, she admitted, her voice trembling as tears welled in her eyes. I don't even know who I am anymore. I reached out and took her hand in mine, squeezing gently. You're not lost, I said, my voice soft and unwavering. You're finally seeing things for what they are. And it's okay to feel that way. The silence between us stretched, charged with unspoken truths. She was teetering on the edge of something irreversible, standing on the brink of abandoning the life she'd known for so long. And I was there, waiting, ready to catch her when she finally let go. This time, when she leaned in, there was no hesitation. Her kiss was urgent, full of the quiet desperation that had been building inside her for years. I wrapped my arms around her, pulling her closer, feeling her warmth as the weight of our choices melted away in that moment. Owen was the furthest thing from her mind. And Nora? Nora didn't exist for me in that instant. The kisses deepened, shifting from tentative brushes of lips to a deliberate, slow exploration. My hands found their way to her waist, pulling her against me, while her hands traveled up my chest, clutching at my shirt as if anchoring herself to the reality of what was happening. She pulled back slightly, breathless, her eyes dark with conflicting emotions. I don't know if we should, she began, her voice shaking, but I silenced her with another kiss, slow and deliberate, leaving no room for doubt. We're already here, Ivy, I said, my voice low but steady. Her hesitation crumbled as she kissed me again, deeper this time. I felt the last of her walls come down, her body yielding as she surrendered completely. We moved in perfect sync, neither of us rushing, each moment deliberate and heavy with meaning. As my lips traced the curve of her neck, I felt her arch toward me, her breath catching softly. My hands slipped under her shirt, feeling the smoothness of her skin as they trailed along the small of her back. When we finally made our way to the bedroom, the tension that had simmered for so long broke, giving way to something far more primal. An unspoken understanding passed between us. There was no turning back. Whatever guilt or hesitation either of us had felt was swept away as passion overtook restraint. The hours blurred into moments of stolen whispers, shared confessions, and hands exploring familiar yet forbidden territory. We began slowly, savoring every touch, every lingering caress. But as the night deepened, restraint gave way to a consuming need, and we let go of everything, leaving nothing unsaid or undone. When it was over, we lay entwined in the dark, the stillness broken only by the sound of our breathing gradually slowing. Ivy rested her head on my chest, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing patterns along my arm. I never thought I'd do something like this, she whispered, her voice thick with exhaustion and tinged with relief. I didn't respond. I simply held her closer, my fingers running through her hair as I stared at the ceiling. I could feel the shift within her, the knowledge that she had crossed a line she could never uncross. And a part of me reveled in it. Ivy had been lost in her marriage for far too long, and now she was mine. As she drifted into sleep, a familiar surge of satisfaction welled within me. This wasn't just about the act itself, though it had been inevitable. This was about control. about turning the tables on Owen in a way he could never anticipate. Ivy wouldn't suspect for a second that this was all part of a larger plan. To her, it was real, a genuine connection born from loneliness and neglect. That was the beauty of it all. The weeks that followed unfolded like a perfectly executed chess match. I maintained the momentum carefully, juggling my subtle manipulation of Nora and Owen while nurturing my growing bond with Ivy. Each day, she drifted further from her husband, and with every text, every fleeting touch, I pulled her deeper into my world. About 3 weeks later, we were all invited to a casual dinner party. It was a small gathering, the kind of thing that would have felt normal in the past. But nothing about this was normal anymore, not after everything that had happened. Owen and Nora were there as expected, playing their parts flawlessly. They laughed with friends, shared stories, and acted as if their betrayal was some well-guarded secret. Their charade was convincing, I'd give them that. But tonight wasn't about them. Tonight was about Ivy. As the evening wore on, I stayed close to her, careful not to raise suspicion. It wasn't long before she caught my eye, gesturing subtly toward the kitchen. Her face was pale, her wide eyes reflecting an emotion I couldn't quite place. Fear or something deeper. Without hesitation, I followed her. The chatter and laughter faded as the kitchen door swung shut behind us. She turned to face me, twisting the edge of her sleeve nervously, her eyes darting away. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice calm, though a flicker of unease rippled through me. Something was wrong. She took a deep breath, her lips trembling as she finally looked at me. I don't know how to say this," she murmured. "Just say it," I urged gently, stepping closer. She exhaled shakily, her chest rising and falling as though trying to steady herself. "I'm pregnant," she blurted, the words landing like a thunderclap in the silence. For a moment, I was stunned into silence, my mind reeling as I processed what she had just said. Pregnant. Ivy was pregnant, and it wasn't Owen's child. "Hurting you for years," I said, cutting her off, my voice quiet but filled with intensity. "He deserves to know the truth, Ivy. And more importantly, you deserve to be free of him." Tears spilled down her cheeks as she shook her head vehemently. "I can't. I just can't. I don't know how he'll react." I stepped closer, my hands resting firmly on her shoulders, forcing her to look at me. "Listen to me, Ivy. This is our chance, your chance. He's not the man you need anymore, and deep down, you know it. He's been neglecting you, taking you for granted, while you've been carrying everything on your own. But you're not alone anymore. You have me." Her eyes searched mine, wavering under the weight of my words. "I don't know if I can do this," she said, her voice trembling with fear and uncertainty. "You can," I assured her, my tone resolute. "You don't have to face this alone. And you don't owe him anything anymore. Not after everything he's done to you." She hesitated, her teeth tugging at her lip as fresh tears slipped down her face. But then I saw it. A subtle shift in her expression, a flicker of realization. Change was coming whether she felt ready for it or not. "I'm scared," she whispered, the words barely audible. Gently, I cupped her face in my hands, my thumbs brushing away the tears that streaked her cheeks. "You don't have to be. I'm here with you, Ivy. We'll figure this out together. You're not alone in this." The gravity of the moment pressed down on us as we stood in the dimly lit kitchen, the muffled laughter and hum of the party filtering through the closed door. Ivy was pregnant with my child, and Owen had no idea. The bitter irony struck me. He had taken Nora from me, but now I had taken something from him that mattered so much more. The question loomed large in the silence. What happened next? There was no way this secret could remain buried forever. Sooner or later, it would come to light, and the fallout would be nothing short of catastrophic. But that was exactly what I wanted. Owen needed to feel the weight of his actions, to witness firsthand the unraveling of everything he believed was untouchable. Ivy took a shaky breath, her hands instinctively resting on her stomach, a protective gesture that spoke louder than words about her acceptance of the truth. "We'll figure it out," I said again, my voice soft but unwavering, my grip on her shoulders steady. She nodded slowly, brushing away the last of her tears, her resolve hardening. "Okay," she whispered, the word carrying a quiet determination. We both knew there was no going back. The foundation of everything had shifted beneath our feet, and the inevitable reckoning drew closer with every passing moment. But for now, we would hold this secret between us, letting the tension simmer until the time was right to let it all explode. As we rejoined the party, the room buzzed with warmth and laughter. Owen's voice rose above the crowd, his laughter ringing out, and Nora's bright smile shone beside him. They looked every bit the picture-perfect couple, blissfully unaware that their carefully constructed world was hanging by a thread. I caught Ivy's gaze from across the room. Her eyes flicked to Owen and back to me, fear and uncertainty swirling in their depths. But there was something else there too, something darker, more resolute. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was about the reckoning that none of us could escape. The truth would come out. It was only a matter of time before the facade cracked and shattered, leaving devastation in its wake. And when that moment arrived, I would be there to see it through, standing in the ashes as the life they had stolen from me went up in flames. Stay tuned, because the darkest part of this story is still to come. Trust me, the next chapter will make everything you've just read feel like the calm before the storm.